Christmas is a time for family, for warmth, laughter, and togetherness. But what happens when the ones who should love you the most forget you exist? This is the story of Robert Harrison, a kind-hearted grandfather who spent Christmas Eve waiting for a family that never came. Abandoned and heartbroken, he made a decision that would change everything, not just for himself, but for the family who left him behind. It's a tale of loneliness, revenge, and ultimately, redemption. Reminder that love isn't just about being present, it's about showing up. Let us know where you are watching from, what time you found this video. Leave a like and a comment. Let's get back to the story. Snowflakes whirled in the air on the chilly evening of Christmas Eve in the little town of Whitefish, Montana, and the streets were illuminated with lights that were decorated for the holiday season. Almost every home on the street was bustling with the sounds of family get-togethers, including music, laughing, and the pleasant buzz of conversation. The only indication of life was a solitary porch light that was left on, throwing a lonely glow over the snow that was still on Robert Harrison's driveway. The house was dark and quiet. The widower, who was 72 years old, was sitting by the window inside the house, wearing the brand-new sweater that he had purchased only for this evening. His shoes were shined, and his silver hair was groomed in a nice manner. His children and grandkids were the recipients of each and every one of the gifts that were wrapped under the Christmas tree that was tucked away in the corner of the room. He had been anticipating this moment for a whole year. Robert's home has been the location of the Harrison family's Christmas Eve meal gatherings for what seemed like decades. In contrast, his son David had insisted on throwing the event at his larger and more luxurious home this year. "We'll pick you up at 5 o'clock, Dad," David had informed his father. In an attempt to conceal his dissatisfaction, Robert had nodded. Although he enjoyed preparing meals for his family, he was aware that things had changed, and so he waited. The clock struck 5 o'clock, and it was gone. 6, then 7, and finally 8. When Robert checked his phone, he saw that there were no calls or messages. Once he contacted David's number, the call was immediately transferred to his voicemail. Even his daughter Lisa did not respond to the question. Those grandchildren? It's likely that they are too preoccupied with playing with their new toys to remember Grandpa. At 8 o'clock, the clock struck. He was able to hear the ancient grandfather clock ticking like a mocking countdown, thanks to the fact that the home was so silent. Robert rose up with a heavy sigh, his bones hurting not just from the effects of being older, but also from the burden of being abandoned. Taking his coat and keys, he walked out of the room and locked the door behind him. On Christmas Eve, the streets were deserted as he drove to KFC, which was the only establishment that was open. The fluorescent lights buzzed above inside the building. A handful of other solitary individuals were dispersed across the area, eating in secrecy. Following the placing of his order, Robert sat down by the window and saw the families who were walking by outside, their faces beaming with happiness as they carried their gifts in their arms. He peeled his chicken, the oil leaving a smear on the napkin, and the flavor was unremarkable in comparison to the feast he had envisioned sharing with others. He let out a sour laugh on his lips. After all those years of being a parent, of celebrating Christmas with his children, of being filled with love and happiness, and now here he was, unremembered. While all of this was going on, the Harrison family was celebrating in full force at David's residence. There was a steady flow of wine, music was playing, and the children were tearing through their gifts with enthusiasm. The question was eventually posed by tiny Emily, who was carrying a present that had his name on it. "Where is Grandpa?" There was complete silence in the room. David's face became faint. Lisa let out a gasp. "Oh my God, we forgot, Dad." Anxiety began to creep in. There were phone calls made. "I thought you were picking him up," was one of the excuses of the day. "No, you said you'd handle it." It was as if a smothering blanket had been placed over them by guilt. They scrambled to get to Robert's place the next morning, their pulses racing with embarrassment. At the time of their arrival, however, the door was not locked. The home was immaculate. The tree had been removed, and the gifts had disappeared. A solitary envelope was placed on the table in the kitchen. There was a photograph of Robert at KFC, carrying a glass of soda and smiling with a sorrowful expression on his face, printed just underneath it. "Happy Christmas to you. Hope you had a wonderful time at the feast. I've made the decision to spend the holidays at a location where I am felt valued." The last piece of evidence was a boarding permit to Bali that was dated that same morning. Sadly, Robert had left. In the course of many weeks, the family looked for, phoned, and pleaded for pardon. On the other hand, Robert had not provided a forwarding address. What about his social media? It has been removed. Is that his phone? Totally disconnected? They did not get a postcard until the springtime, which was quite some time. There is a photograph of Robert on the beach, holding a drink in his hand while smiling among a bunch of new acquaintances. There is not enough time in life to wait for apologies. What about the gifts for Christmas? Children who were really grateful for them were given them. The family felt utterly destroyed. The one person who had always been there for them had been taken away from them as a result of their carelessness. Is that Robert? He celebrated the next Christmas in Bali, where he was surrounded by people who treated him as if he were a member of their own family. Because sometimes the greatest way to exact retribution is to live a happy life. For a number of months, the Harrison family made several unsuccessful attempts to locate Robert. David recruited the services of a private investigator, but all they discovered was a trail of closed bank accounts and a property that had been sold. On social media, Lisa made a series of pleading posts, but the only answer she received was absolute silence. Particularly young Emily, the grandkids sobbed themselves to sleep, muttering, "We're sorry, Grandpa." This was particularly heartbreaking for Emily. In contrast, Robert was finished with apologizing. During this time, Robert was located in a villa in Bali that was surrounded by the sun, was drinking fresh coconut water as his skin was tanned by the sun's rays. The locals had become his friends. He had joined a reading group for expats, and he had even begun to develop his artistic skills. His sense of vitality returned after a long period of time. The ringing of his phone occurred one evening. While he was gazing at the sun setting over the water, "It is a message from a number that is unknown. Please, Dad, I beg you, we need to have a conversation. I am David." After deleting it, Robert grinned and then placed an order for another drink. While they were in Montana, the Harrisons were experiencing a breakdown. Karen, David's wife, was unable to bear the burden of conscience. "Hushed. We abandoned him throughout the course of one night. What kind of people does that make us?" Jake, who is Lisa's son and is a teenager, began to behave inappropriately, skipping school and getting into fights. Grandpa was the only one who actually listened to me. He screamed in response to her confrontation with him. And then, the worst possible thing happened. David's company started to crumble. The narrative of how the Harrisons had handled their own father prompted a significant investor to withdraw their investment after hearing it. "No loyalty in family, no loyalty in business," the guy had added in a chilly tone. Another gathering of David's relatives took place at his home, this time in a state of sadness, exactly 1 year to the day after they had forgotten about him. If there are no decorations, there will be no feast. There is just quiet. Next, the doorbell began to ring. Emily raced off to answer it, her pulse racing as she did so. Robert was there, sitting in the snow, waiting for him. It was not only him, however. A lady named Maria, a widow with loving eyes whom he had met in Bali, was standing next to him. Next to her were her 2 grandkids, who clung to Robert as if he were their own grandfather. The family let out a gasp. Although Robert's grin seemed serene, his eyes were as cold as steel. "Happy Christmas," he wished everyone. "I came back to give you one last gift." After entering the building, he gave David a tiny package and then turned around to leave. It was opened by David. There was a key to Robert's previous residence inside. "You sold it." David hushed his voice. Robert gave a little nod. "In honor of a lovely young family. The couple has 3 children. They're going to fill it with laughing once again." Lisa's eyes welled up with tears. "I beg you, Dad. Ow. Our hearts are broken." With Maria's hand in his, Robert hesitated at the entrance to the room. "I know," he whispered in your ear. "Can't take back what you've done by apologizing. For my own peace, not for yours, I have forgiven you a very long time ago. But it does not imply that I have to continue to live in a place where I am not desired." After saying so, he walked away, leaving them to bear the crushing weight of their remorse. Christmas was never forgotten by the Harrison family again. Every year after that, they got together, not to give each other gifts or to celebrate, but to volunteer at a nursing home, where they served meals to old people who had no one else to eat with. Emily would swear that she saw a familiar figure in the distance. A guy with silver hair walking hand in hand with a lady and smiling as they went away into the winter night. This would happen on occasion when the snowfall was just perfect.